Hello and welcome to the Elders Insight, an exciting new podcast series presented by Hepworth & Associates, your source for advocacy, advisory, and planning insights for seniors, pre-seniors, and their caring families. Today's podcast is sponsored by Rotary Dial Media. So let's get started with the show on location today in Toronto.
Well, here we are again with another episode of the Elders Insight, and what a great day for a podcast. We continue to thank you for all the positive responses that we're getting. We thank you for all the email questions, the thoughts, the ideas, the thumbs up, so please keep them coming. Stay tuned for more episodes and tell everyone you know to dial in, or I guess the phrase is click in, and remember that all episodes of the Elders Insight are recorded and available on the website of Hepworth & Associates, www.hepworth.ca. That all said, let's get on with today's episode. My name is Gary Hepworth, and I'm your host for this podcast here on the Elders Insight, and today we're live in Toronto, Canada. And we know not everyone can make it out to our presentations and seminars, so that's why we chose to start this podcast series, so we can bring it right into your home. So a hearty hello to wherever you might be today. Today's episode is entitled Estate Planning Smarts. And the whole subject of finances is, in general, a very key element of our Aging Well model. For many, financial planning is a bit overwhelming, and there are a lot of options available to us. So we're going to approach financing for aging well in a small component approach, because it's a very big topic. Today we're talking about estate planning smarts and some approaches to building, preserving, and leveraging your legacy. As this episode likely has an impact on not only you, but your family, you may want to invite your loved ones to click in or go view the recorded podcast on the website. To help us better understand and consider the subject and the options available to us for estate planning smarts these days, I have a terrific guest in front of me, Lola Makanowitz. Lola is with the Cooperators. She's a certified financial planner, a certified insurance professional, a chartered life underwriter, a certified health specialist, and a whole lot more, right here from Toronto. And she's also a member of my advisory board. So good morning, Lola.
Good morning, Gary. Thank you, Gary, and it's a real pleasure to see you again, and a pleasure to be here on Elders Insight. This is a really great idea to get important and relevant information to your audience, and I'm really happy to help wherever I can.
Thanks, Lola. I wasn't kidding when I said a whole lot more, because I know you're very active in our local business improvement area, and I know you run the Vibe Center where you have many events, and I know you're very active in the community as a whole. And I know that through your activities in the community, you meet many people and have a really good understanding of what people's financial needs are, their financial situations, and what plans they need to make.
Thanks, Gary, for that intro. And you're quite right about the estate planning piece, that it is really all about building, preserving, and leveraging your legacy. There's a lot of difference in people's ages and financial stages and their challenges and what's important to them both today and tomorrow. So for each of those differences, there's planning options, and they will change over time as your circumstances do. That said, though, I approach financial planning or estate planning from 4 particular areas of focus. First being your plan in and your plan out. 2 being risk management. 3, tax efficiencies, and 4th, review and update. For each of these, there are options and opportunities within them that people should consider for their estate planning. The focus of these areas remain constant to you. We just tweak them, or you tweak them as you go along as your circumstances change. Now, I know today a lot of your audience will be mixed, and some may be just beginning to think about estate planning, some might be further along, but I'm hoping today to really provide some valuable new insights and also potentially to confirm some of those efforts that people have already been doing. So in either case, I'm really hoping to bring to your audience some peace of mind today.
Okay, Lola. So as you know, we get lots of questions at our presentations and seminars. So I'd like to pose some of the common ones that we do get. So let's get started on that. So these 4 areas that you focused on, intriguing. You talk about plan in and plan out. What do you mean by plan in and plan out?
Plan in is really about your accumulation stage. That could be saving during your working years. Things like maybe your company pension, your RRSP, it could be your real estate, it could be a business. So it's really a varied approach to how you accumulate. I always recommend in the accumulation stage to start early, and kind of that slow and steady is really the best approach because it gives you the best effect of the magic of compounding. Together with the planning in, there is the plan out stage. So you have to sort of look at that as well. So you want to look at, when do you think you want to retire? How much do you want to retire on? When might you take your CPP? What assets do you want to use? Or do you want to leave a legacy or spend it all? Now, the must-haves that I always say when developing a plan in and a plan out is to have a team. The team could be varied, but it usually would consist of a certified financial planner, an accountant, a lawyer, an elder care consultant, and an advocate. That doesn't mean you need everybody all at the same time. There will be different stages where you'll need different team members, but those should be the primary keys. Some of the other must-haves are a will. It really is the cornerstone of a good estate plan. Powers of attorney, both for your financial and your health. Other health directives, maybe a trust might be in your situation. Obviously, also look at having a good executor. Make sure that your approach is you treat it like a job. And developing a plan really, I would say, starts for the most part with your certified financial planner, and then the other elements start to kick in.
I'm glad you mentioned the importance of the wills and the powers of attorney because, I encourage people to make sure that they focus on those, do get them written down, drafted properly, and actually do use a lawyer because actually using a professional for these kind of things is extremely important. Great, so let's move on to risk management, the second item that you mentioned. What's your thinking on that?
So the risk management piece is things that you can't potentially know if it's going to happen. So there are ways and tools that you can put in place to risk manage. So some of the things that we don't know that are going to happen, could we die too soon? Might we suffer a catastrophic injury or illness, and that might include later on in life with long-term care needs. There's market fluctuations. So those are elements of the things that we just can't control. Probably the go-to is insurance. When it comes to dying too soon, life insurance obviously is the go-to there. And things like term life insurance can be a really great solution in the accumulation stage, especially for young families that are budget conscious and they just want to make sure that they protect their future income. Permanent life insurance can help both in the accumulation stage and the preservation stage. And permanent life insurance definitely should be looked at if you have potential capital gains or even want to look at sort of lowering that income tax liabilities as well. Disability insurance, again, if you become disabled, can help you to provide a regular monthly income. Critical illness insurance is a new piece where it's really only about 20 years in Canada, and it's a great product because it can offer you a lump sum payment. We usually recommend a couple of years of income, but the focus of it is it provides a huge financial flexibility, not just for you, but for your entire family, because you can use it any way you want. Long-term care insurance is a great thing to look at as well. Depending on what stage you are in your life. And segregated funds is often overlooked when it comes as a risk management tool. And segregated funds are a sister to mutual funds, and the segregated funds will provide guarantees such as a death benefit guarantee and also maturity guarantees.
So when we look at long-term care insurance, my understanding, that can be quite expensive for many people depending on their age. So are there other options people might want to consider?
So Gary, you're quite right. It can get expensive. There's definitely a sweet spot where it may make sense to buy long-term care insurance, and there may be some places where it doesn't make sense. But I would say that, it should be talked about and considered early in the accumulation stage and the plan-in stage. So if you can anticipate potentially you may have those needs, it can be part of your savings and it can be part of that accumulation.
Okay, great. The third area is the one we always kind of get nervous about, which is taxes. So you talked about tax efficiencies. So what do you mean by tax efficiencies?
Tax efficiencies really are what are ways in which we can either in the accumulation stage or the spending stage mitigate our taxes and have some more in our pocket. And I would always say the first and foremost is to seek professional. Get those people in your team. Start with your certified financial planner. Your accountant is probably going to be your most go-to person for your tax efficiencies. And you may need a lawyer depending on how things you want to set up. But I would say use a professional, even if you think you have a simple tax filing. It's not expensive to use a professional, and I would say use the same consistent one every year because they will know also what you did 5 years ago and what you maybe want to do 5 years from now. So that's important as well. Again, seek it during the accumulation stage because you may be at a point where RSPs don't make sense, TFSAs do, or maybe RSPs do and TFSAs don't. RESPs are a great way to look at some tax efficiencies, and it's also a great way in which grandparents can provide a great legacy for the children and be tax efficient at the same time. Universal Life, Whole Life, they're both permanent life insurance products. They both can provide some very good tax efficiencies, both from a death benefit perspective and an accumulation.
Are Universal Life and Whole Life same or similar or different?
So they're similar in the sense that they're both permanent. They're going to last you for your whole life, and they're there for today if you pass away, but they're there, when you're 90, for example. But where they differ is that whole life will typically be, have a lot of more guarantees in there and will typically be just more of a hands-off approach, whereas the universal life can have a hands-on accumulation and wealth growth component. So I would also say, from just continuing on the tax efficiencies as well, the spending stage. Sometimes there are huge advantages in taking from one pot versus another. So I would look at things like, when have you exercised your unlocking options? So make sure when you get into some of those major decisions that you're consulting your team or the appropriate professionals on your team what you should be doing. Look at when you should be starting your CPP benefits. Maybe it's 60, maybe it's 70. So there are differences. One of the other ways I would say is diversify, or look at diversifying, or consider maybe something on a more balanced or growth accounts. I think the biggest mistake that people moving into retirement think that everything's got to be locked into GICs because that's safe. But what individuals don't realize is that if they're 60 or 65, they could have 30, 35 years. They could have lots of years of growth still left. So you have actually time on your side to look at either balanced or some of your accounts being in a balanced or growth accounts. But I do caution that always just to stay within your risk tolerance as well. So never, have that too far out of sight. Charitable giving can be an excellent way for tax efficiencies to your estate. So again, that's a whole broader topic that we can certainly have a discussion on at some other point in time. The other thing that is often we don't talk about is just giving it away. Now I say take care of yourself first, absolutely. You want to have enough money for yourself, but if there is cash sitting there that's just attracting tax and your intent was to give it to your grandchildren or to your children, there are safe ways to transfer that money, and then it's dealt with. It's one less thing that you need to deal with, and it's not attracting tax as well. Know your impact of your capital gains on your estate, if you have any. Know the income tax impact of your estate. And again, permanent life insurance can be a great way to pay tax liabilities and can be a very efficient way to pay that as well. Just a couple last points on the tax efficiencies. I would say, your accountant, if you have a business, your accountant should be discussing qualified small business exemptions. In the more rural areas of Canada, there's farming, and there are farming, special exemptions involved there. So again, your accountant needs to work with you. Look at probate costs. Not that I'm saying all probate costs should be avoided, right? Because there's times when it just has to flow to the estate. But there are real efficient ways on how you can have less a lesser estate flow to there so that it mitigates some of the probate costs. And one of the effective ways to do that is also assigning beneficiaries.
Assigning beneficiaries to RSPs and various other investments. Okay. So I'm glad you mentioned the fact about take care of yourself first, because before you give it away, I think people realize now that we are living longer than we used to. So if you're retiring at age 65 now, as you said, you could have another 30 years. So before you give it all away, make sure that you factor in the fact that you may develop some health issues as you age, which will require some care, which will require some financial support because the government's just not going to be able to provide all that care. So yes, make sure you think about yourself first. So thank you for raising that one, Lola. And finally, your fourth point was the review and the update, which sounds like there's some common sense thoughts coming here.
So I would say, folks, for if you have done the first 3 stages, you have done 99% of what you need to do. And I think that's very, very important. I think the last piece is just to review yearly. Your planner, your accountant, your lawyer. You may not need to access these people, all of them yearly, but most certified financial planners will sit down with their clients and review their plan on a yearly basis. We may need to make some changes in the in stage or the out stage. If there are changes that happen mid-year or mid-review, absolutely address them. You can deal with them, adjust for changes. I would also say is just, as part of the review and update, just continue to tweak the process so that it does provide a little bit of ease for your family.
Okay, that's great. So what do people tend to forget when it comes to thinking about their estate planning?
One of the things they tend to forget is they tend to consult the family. Sometimes they don't, that doesn't always align what you think and what your family thinks. I think that's one of the pieces they tend to forget, and they tend to forget also to potentially provide that contact information for the team, because that is a great head start for the family and a big help.
So you mentioned the family. When it comes to aging well, how should the family be more involved in the estate planning process?
That's a really good question, and it sometimes is a very tricky question. So it really varies depending on individual to individual, and it depends on the complexity of the estate. If it is a very simple estate where there may be a principal residence, there's no dependent adult children, there's some liquid investments, and really if the intent is for all the assets to pass to the surviving spouse and then after that to pass on to the children equally, then it's fairly uncomplicated, and you probably may not need to consult your kids too much, but you could. Where we do suggest some consult and some discussion is when they're more complicated estates, and I would even say there's even more planning involved as well there too. So where there may be a cottage, there may be a family business where one child is involved and the other child is not. In these family business cases, there really needs to be a discussion on business succession planning and possible equalization down the road. Cottages tend to be, that's very, very common here in Ontario. We've got some beautiful cottages, as it is all over the country. And again, the discussion somewhat needs to happen is, do the kids want to keep the cottage? And if they do, well, who's going to pay the capital gains estate tax? And who's going to look after it? So there's a little bit bigger of a discussion, and those are the pieces I would say that there needs to be a bit of a conversation so you understand what your family wants.
Any final thoughts you want to leave us with?
So final thoughts, I would say, and this just don't delay. You may not have a perfect answer for how everything is going to happen, but I would say make the best decision you can now in the situation now, and get your will and power of attorneys done. Because if you don't, it will cost your family, double, triple, quadruple the cost down the road, if not more. And I would say that's probably the biggest gift you can give your family, is really to plan, is to have that laid out, have it done. Have those professionals in place. It's amazing to the family. They're dealing with all the emotional aspects of what's going on, and it's great to have that team to deal with the financial aspects and all the things that need to get done. And I think if you can do those couple of things, that will give you the peace of mind. And that's really, I think, what we all want as individuals, is to have our matters looked after and to, being able to have some peace of mind.
That's an important point. And in terms of wills and powers of attorney, it's important that people, once they have them done, that they tell their loved ones where they are. We hear many stories of people can't finding father's will or power of attorney, or it's in a safety deposit box and no one knows where the safety deposit box is. It's important, once you've documented these important things, that you share with the family, where they can find them. I have some clients who use a binder to record it all, or just even a sheet of paper where all critical phone numbers and contacts. So,
yeah, and on that note, actually, we have a document. If anyone is interested, we have a document we can send out that is kind of a template, and you can just add everything in there and store it digitally as well.
Super idea. So Lola, this has been great. Big thanks to you on behalf of all our listeners and yours truly. As you know, our advice to our clients and listeners is about planning, the P word, and another P word, peace of mind. So it's good to hear that someone else who understands the importance of that message, especially when it comes to finances and a legacy. And, we are living longer.
It's been my pleasure, Gary. It's really been a lot of fun this morning, and thanks to you and your listeners. I'd love to come back again. There's certainly a lot more to talk about when it comes to estate planning and finances in general.
And this is a huge topic, so hopefully we will have you back. Okay, folks, that's a wrap for today's podcast, and we thank you all for joining us. I want to thank everyone for clicking in for our podcasts over the past weeks. Remember, you can find them recorded on our website. Your comments have been encouraging, so keep the ideas coming, and you will see more podcasts coming in the future. If you would like to get in touch with Lola, and if you'd like to get a copy of that document you mentioned, just drop us a note and we will connect you with Lola. So stay tuned. Look forward to giving more insights around aging well for seniors, pre-seniors, and their families. Take care. See you soon.
Thanks for joining us today on The Elders Insight. We hope you found this podcast helpful, informative, interesting, and most of all, fun. We hope you can join us for our future podcasts as we continue to be your source for advocacy, advisory, and planning insights for seniors, pre-seniors, and their caring families. A big thanks to Hepworth & Associates team, and we look forward to seeing you the very next time here on The Elders Insight. It could be me, but I'm starting to feel a little left out of what's all going on today. There's certainly a lot going on when I watch TV or read the paper or even when I stroll through the internet. In fact, there's too much of it, and it's always breaking news. How do I filter through all of this to find the things that are important to me without all the noise that comes with it? Rotary Dial Media. Media for the best of us.